Awesome. Thanks so much, Naomi, and great to see you all. I'm Alex, and I'm the founder and CEO of Cephable, and joined by Julia Franklin. Julia, you want to introduce yourself while I pull up a screen share here?
Of course, of course. Thanks, everybody. As Alex said, I'm Julia Franklin, and we are Cephable. We're so excited to have you here and share a little bit about our accessible software that hopefully will be useful for you and your communities. So let's jump in. I think we're going to start with a video to kind of showcase some of our users. So
Great, let me kick this off. So for this video, just so everyone knows, there's not a whole lot of audio. You'll hear some people speaking using Cephable's voice controls, which you'll sort of see throughout. But we're going to go ahead and put a video description as well for folks that are screen reader users in the chat. That will give you a sort of detailed overview of what's going on in the video as well. There's some music that's playing and then some voice commands. But the gist of it is that it's folks using computers in new ways with the Cephable platform, with things like head movement, face expressions, using switches as inputs, tapping virtual buttons from a phone or tablet, and all sorts of things that work best for them. And they're using it across a number of different applications, from people using it in Photoshop to playing violin and turning the page by moving their body, to more easily handling video calls like this Zoom that we're on with different types of head movements and voice controls, writing and using Excel and all sorts of fun stuff. So I'll play it real quick. It's just a couple minutes, and then we'll jump back over and talk a little bit more about what Cephable is, how it all works, give you a little bit more of a live demo of it as well, and then talk more about how we all can work together to sort of create new levels of accessibility. So let me go ahead and click play, and we'll get started.
Post. Type Happy International Day of People with Disabilities. Open PowerPoint. New slide.
Scroll down. Stop. Type "that concludes our findings," period. Open Excel.
Brush.
God, I love that video. It's so cool. So what you probably saw is people using a whole lot of different things with Cephable, and ultimately moving their digital interactions beyond just the keyboard and mouse, and using controls and inputs and applications on their computers in ways that works best for them. We saw folks like Sarah Todd scrolling through social media using her head, but then easily switching to a different application and using voice controls that worked best for her. We saw folks muting when they turn their head away from the video to talk to someone in real life in these sort of more intuitive interactions. We saw folks using voice commands with Photoshop in order to augment what was otherwise challenging to do with a broken arm that would otherwise require a whole bunch of keyboard shortcuts and everything else. So it's a lot of different things. Go ahead. Yeah.
real quick, I just want to tell everybody too, we hope that we're sparking some questions, and Alex and I will be monitoring the chat if you want to drop any questions or thoughts that come into your mind, and then we'll leave some time at the end also to make sure that we cover the areas, the use cases, and the things that are popping in your mind during the presentation.
Yes, thank you. And also, because I'm sharing my screen, I might not see it. So Julia, please feel free to jump in and interrupt me if there's a question that's important to answer right away, or we can always jump into chat and help in the meantime as well if there's something urgent. So like I was saying, Cephable is a platform where we combine a lot of different inputs into different types of interactions with a computer. Folks can do things like use the Cephable mobile app, which you saw in the video, on a tablet to set up things like virtual buttons, which means that you can create a grid of buttons that you could easily tap and change depending on the applications you're using. We saw voice controls that can also adapt to individuals over time, meaning that it will perform better than the sort of out-of-the-box voice controls, but for just about everyone, but also especially for those with speech impairments or limited speech. We have settings you can turn on for things like we call our optimistic mode, which allows people to use voice even if they're only able to make a single sound. They can turn that into a different type of input for the apps that they're using too. Face expressions like mouth opening and eyebrow raising, head movements like tilting and turning and leaning, ducking, rising, looking up, looking down, stuff like that. You can program switches to do different things. And you can also take device motion from a phone or tablet as an input as well. So tilting or shaking that device. What you use the platform for is to then tell your computer what you want to do when you're doing these different types of inputs. When I tap that button, what should it do? When I say that voice command, what should it do? And Cephable makes it easy to create these different sets of controls for the different games that you're playing, the different applications you're using, from PowerPoint like I'm in right now, to Zoom that we're on as well. And people use Cephable for a lot of different things. The way that it works is that we build into your existing computers. So if you have a Windows machine, a PC, or if you have a Mac, you can download the app right now and actually get started with trying out things with the camera controls and microphone controls. You don't need any new hardware. This isn't a device that you have to buy. You can just download it and use it right away with your existing camera and microphone on your laptop. Or even if you don't have a camera on a computer you're trying to use, you can even use a mobile app, a mobile device with the Cephable mobile app as well, to use your camera from your phone or from your tablet as controls. The other
So
thing
Alex, we have a really good question in the chat too. Monica said, are you saying that it has speech recognition for non-traditional speech? I love this question. And really quick context, Monica, too, that I didn't mention. We didn't do a big intro, but I am also a speech pathologist. And that's one reason that I was really drawn to coming into this company, is because the adaptive speech controls have been built upon looking at different types of speech patterns. And so our platform, gets smarter over time. And you can also add different types of voice controls to an input. So if you have a user who can only make vowel sounds or can only make consonant vowel combinations or a one syllable word, we can create profiles and a setup that works specifically for their unique speech patterns. Alex can talk a little bit more about the adaptability.
Yeah, well, we can, I think, show a little bit about how all that works. We'll get into more of like a live demo in the actual app. And I'll make sure to touch on that as well. But great question. And yes, definitely a big focus of ours. My background's actually in speech technology and speech recognition technology. So that was something that was one of the very first things we ever experimented with in the early research days that led to Cephable. A couple other things outside of, no new hardware, which is great. It's just an app that you download. I think from my perspective, the most exciting thing is that it's actually entirely free for individual users. Instead of trying to license and sell things that you got to pay for to download, we're intentionally trying to remove what we call the disability tax when it comes to accessibility, where individuals are having to purchase or procure their own assistive technology to use a computer in the same way that other folks can use with a keyboard and mouse. And so instead, what we do is we work with enterprises and businesses to integrate the controls into their applications or into their employee experiences to do even more. So individuals can go download Cephable right now from our website, create an account for free, and use the entirety of the platform. Use our AI to generate controls, which I'll show you in a little bit. Join the community and share ideas and ways that you use it as well. As long as it's just focused on your individual access, we want to make sure that that's something that we're unlocking for everyone. Couple things about the real value that Cephable creates for individuals and for our community partners too. Julia, if you want to share a little bit more about this.
Yes, absolutely. I was just answering, Kim had a great question. Are we used on Chromebooks? And at this point, we're only compatible with Mac OS and Windows. So hopefully in the future, but great question.
Yeah, just one thing with Chromebooks, it's not, the Chromebooks don't have the ability for us to do the control automation that we do. So while our app, like we can get it from like an engineering perspective to actually run, and like we can do camera inputs and we can do the microphone inputs, and our speech recognition can run on a Chromebook, we can't actually do the keyboard and mouse automation. And we can't do the other half of what Cephable does, basically, which is a limitation of the Chrome OS right now, but we're hoping to work with Google to kind of resolve that and unlock that experience for more folks as well.
Yeah, you guys are full of wonderful questions.
Yeah, these are great. Keep them coming.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. So to kind of build the bridge from what the software is into kind of what it does, what value could it offer? I can tell you're already thinking about the people that you serve and work with, or you yourself as an individual of, how do we use it functionally? And so what I really like to talk about of the value of what Cephable is, that true accessibility and true access allows for an individual to modify their needs across different contexts. Accessibility should be fluid because disabilities and access needs change over time depending on the context. And so that's one thing that we're seeing with our software, is that given this, large menu of different inputs, that we can offer some sort of value to a lot of different types of accessibility needs in one app versus having to have lots of different pieces of hardware that have kind of a myopic, like single focus. So that's been really exciting, especially as coming from as a therapist myself into this company. We know that one size doesn't fit all in a lot of spaces, and definitely not in assistive technology. So that's been really exciting. And we're finding too that we're not trying to, fully tell and replace the keyboard and the mouse, but we like to think of Cephable as an additive feature that you add on top of what's already working. And so dancing alongside other parts of, a suite of assistive technology that is working for an individual. But if something is hard, so we have, users who use quad stick, and they find that programming some of those inputs can be really challenging. And they can, we're not saying don't use certain hardware AT that's working, but how can Cephable provide value on top of what's already working? One more individual use case that I think is really interesting is one of our adult users. He has cerebral palsy and has the ability to press one key on the keyboard at a time holding a pencil. And he loves that ability, but he's added on Cephable voice controls on top of his ability to press a single key at a time using his pencil, to just add that value to increase his independence with playing more games, his productivity with his job. And we're just looking to, help everybody not just promote independence, but maximize the independence that they're capable of based on capabilities and strengths and not deficits, which, on a personal note, as a therapist coming from, justifying my services from a deficit lens for IEPs and insurance companies, it's been really exciting to talk with users and work with users and say, what can you do? What movements are easier for you? And then we can bring Cephable inputs to then promote and maximize the independence that they can have with their computers, with whatever their goals may be as they interact with their tech.
Couple things around the way that people interact that is always a constant question when we say, hey, we have an app that lets you control your computer and it's connected to the internet and uses your camera and your microphone, is very much around the privacy and security of how all that works. And so before we even jump into the platform and show you what it looks like to set up, which is the next thing we're going to show, a couple notes on how we approach privacy and information, especially when it comes to the camera and microphone. All of your controls and settings are managed to your account only and are not shared or exposed or stored outside of your account. And also when it comes to things like camera-based controls and microphone-based controls, those run entirely offline, meaning that, one, you can use it when you're not connected to the internet, which is also important for access, but it also means that we're never recording, we're never streaming that information, we're never storing it. So you can be confident in using your camera and your microphone locally without having anyone be able to see what that's being used for. Even the way that we personalize the speech recognition even happens entirely offline, directly on your own computer, which is pretty cool. So without further ado, I want to make sure we can actually spend some of the time showing you the platform and not just talking about it. So I'm going to switch over to the Cephable desktop app. In this case, I'm on a Mac, but it's the exact same experience on Windows. and just give you sort of rundown of all the different core components and things like that, and show you a little bit of it in action too, some live demos. But let me switch over to this monitor. So what you're seeing right now, yep.
I thought you were going to have to take some time to pull it up, but I just wanted to clarify the desktop app and the companion app. A big question that we often get is, are you compatible with mobile? And so what Alex is going to be showing is the desktop app. So at a foundation, the core functionality of Cephable is emulating a keyboard and a mouse. And so every input that we're providing is, doing what a keyboard and a mouse would do. So we do have a companion app that is available on your mobile devices, your phones and your tablets. However, that is a supplementary item that's not required. So you get new inputs that would then be controlling your output device, which is a computer.
Thanks, Julia. So over here in the desktop app, I'm in the dashboard. So once you've created an account and you've gone through the initial setup, which will give you a little sneak peek of kind of what that looks like as well. This is what you see every time you open up Cephable, or if you have it automatically start when you start your computer, this will open right up. There's two core concepts to understand when it comes to using Cephable and adding these controls. One is your control profiles, and then the other is the actual controls themselves. A control profile, which you can see here, and I can swap them out, and I've got a current profile here set to PowerPoint. I can add a new profile, I can view it. These are what basically describe our different inputs and our different outputs. And so, for example, if I go to add a new profile, I can see a couple different templates here that's Cephable that we have built for things like writing and editing, one-click games, calculators, mouse-based controls, media controls, keyboard navigation basics, etc. So, for example, if we go into previewing what writing and editing using Cephable can look like, I basically can pull this up and see the list of inputs and outputs. So, for example, I can click on this save item and see that there's a voice control where when I say save, it's going to be the same as hitting Command S. Now, I don't have to go and manually wire these up because it's already pre-built as a template as well. But we can see all sorts of different controls here for writing and editing, like moving around with the cursor, jumping between things, copying, pasting, saving, undo, redo, all the things that you would otherwise expect to do in any type of writing application, whether it be Google Docs or Microsoft Word or your email or even just a text box on a web page or something like that. You can, of course, still go in and customize these. So if I add this profile, now I have my own version of it that I can go in and change. Let's say, for example, to save, I want to be able to tap a button on my phone. Well, I can edit this control and add one here. I can add a virtual button and I can type save. And so now from the companion mobile app with Cephable, I'll have a button I could tap, but I could also go in here and add all these different inputs too. We already have a voice control, but we could always edit that or change it. Let's say I also want to save whenever I open my mouth. I select that I wanted a face expression and I select opening my mouth as the input. And then I'm basically good to go where I can use the camera as that input as well. Let's go back and exit without saving because I have plenty of these. Configuring these things can often be a pain, and it's one of the challenges of digital assistive tech as well, whether it's controlling something like Dragon Naturally Speaking and setting up macros, or it's using a quad stick and having to use Excel spreadsheets to map these different things. An important part of the work that we're trying to do now is using AI to help you create these types of controls for the applications you're using. And what we can do is go down here to creating a new profile. And instead of clicking to start from scratch or using one of these existing templates, I can try this new profile wizard. You'll see it's experimental currently, but we're currently working on improving this so that it sort of comes out of this experimental phase and becomes core to how we interact with it. But all I have to do is actually name the application that I'm trying to use, the types of inputs I want, and even more specifically, I can describe exactly how I want it to work. So let's say, for example, I wanted to create controls for PowerPoint, and I wanted voice controls and head movement. And then I can even come down here and say things like, I want to go to the next slide when I tilt my head to the right, and make sure there are voice controls for editing things. I could say whatever I want there. I could say, I have a hard time with my left hand, and therefore I want voice controls to kind of augment the things that I would otherwise use my left hand for. Or I want buttons that I could tap on my phone in order to make it so I can control my slides when I'm presenting. You can type whatever you want here, then ask Cephable to generate those controls for that application. This can take up to about a minute. Usually it's around 10 seconds. But essentially what Cephable is doing is learning about the different controls that are offered within the application that you described, in this case, PowerPoint, understanding the types of inputs you want and how you described it, and trying to map those into these different sets of controls. And so I can see when I go to preview it, we have next slide, where I could say next slide, which is great. It gave me a default voice command, but I also can tilt my head to the right, exactly like I asked it to do. And then we've got all those voice controls for all these common copying, editing, saving, new presentation, all that stuff that I asked it to do, because I just said do editing things with voice controls. But now if I save this, I can go back. I'll click save and finish to go back. I can now, let's make sure this is, I gotta switch to the right one, because of course I have two different PowerPoints. So let me scroll down and grab the new one. And now I can actually use this control profile with my controls. So because we said tilting our head to the right should go to the next slide, let's actually try that out. I can click start camera here, which is going to open up the camera controls. It opened it up on my other monitor, but it's over here. I'll make it a little bit bigger because I'm on a big monitor too. You can also hide this so you don't need to see it all the time. I can pause it so that it stops doing things. I can turn the lines off if I don't like to see that. If I have multiple cameras, I can switch between them. And if I need to change my resting position, I can change that as well. Let's go ahead and resume it so you can see the tracking of my face happening. And you can see it also trying to save things when I open my mouth, because that was generated. But I'm actually going to go back to PowerPoint and do tilting my head to the right in order to trigger the next slide. So you'll see over on PowerPoint, my camera is still on top. And so from here, if I go left and then I go right, we actually go to the next slide. So I can go left and I can go right and we go to the next slide. And try not to spoil too much of it. Let me pause these and also show you what we can do with voice controls. So just like these camera controls, which I'll close, I can start my microphone, which will pop open another window on my primary monitor, which is of course the other one. And now we'll start to see it recognize my speech in real time and actually show that in this window. And so I can do things like jump back over to the PowerPoint and say things like next slide to get it to trigger. Oops. Next slide. Previous. Next slide. I can also pause this. I can turn on full dictation mode, so it'll just type whatever I'm saying. And I can do that sort of mix of voice controls plus dictation and all that. A couple other things I want to show before we sort of move on. I know we've only got the sort of original 5 minutes left of the scheduled time, and appreciate all of your time as well, is some of the other settings and things that you can explore. So out of the box, control profiles are there's inputs and outputs. Your microphone and your camera can be used right on your own computer, but there's other settings you can turn on as well. So although Cephable speech recognition starts to adapt to individuals over time, we also have this switch that you can just turn on. It's sort of a magic switch that we call optimistic voice controls. This is especially useful for folks that either want really, really fast voice controls and don't need dictation. We see this a lot with folks that are like playing games using Cephable voice controls, or folks with impaired speech or very limited speech, meaning that what we do is instead limit the vocab and optimistically predict what they're trying to say within those controls. So instead of being able to show all of the speech recognition that's happening, it's only going to show what it's optimistically predicting that you're trying to say based off the controls that you're using. Which means, for example, where I had a next slide, which is an actual pretty difficult thing to enunciate, if I don't have any other conflicting voice controls, I can say any part of that and it'll optimistically predict that I'm trying to say that. For example, I could just say next sla and it'll go trigger it. Or if I can't say that X sound, I can skip that and it'll predict that I'm still trying to say that, which is pretty cool. Also, when it comes to camera controls and movement, you saw me doing some exaggerated head movement and things like that. But that's only because I'm trying to show you how far you can move. Within camera settings, you can actually change the sensitivity for any given movement, which means that if you're an individual or you're working with an individual that wants to use head tilting, but they have limited movement in that direction, you can change the specific controls on how far they have to move. Where, for example, on this tilting to the right, like I was doing to go to the next slide, I can turn that all the way up. And now that is tiny twitch-based movements. It's actually around a single degree, a little bit less than a single degree of change to trigger it. Now, on the other side of that spectrum, where I want lower sensitivity, this is more of needing to get to sort of like a 35 degree of change on the lower side. So useful for folks that have spasticity in their movement so that they're not having false triggers happening all the time, or folks that have that range of motion and want to do that more intentional change. But I can control that level of sensitivity for any of the specific movements. So tilting, turning my head, leaning left and right, ducking and rising, how high I need to raise my eyebrows, how much I need to open or close my mouth, how wide I need to smile, to trigger these things all can be changed based off of each individual user. The baseline is pretty sensitive because most of our users are folks with upper mobility impairments. So we try to sort of start our baseline at a little bit more sensitive. So just worth noting. And then the last thing you can do, and this is another thing that's tagged as experimental, is turn on our head mouse controls, which allows you to actually just directly turn on turning or tilting your head in order to move the mouse. So you don't have to go program stuff in a control profile to say when I tilt my head to the right, it should move the mouse to the right. Instead, you can just select that I want to use head tilting. And then when I save this, turn on the camera, we can basically then go and use head controls to move the mouse and stuff like that. That's
Alex, we have a
Yeah.
great question related to the platform. Can you only control or assign a profile to one app at a time, or can you control your operating system overall?
You can certainly control your operating system overall. And as a matter of fact, one of our most commonly used pre-built templates is this keyboard navigation basics. And so if I go preview this profile, you'll see that it's got basically things for keyboard-based controls for navigating. So tabbing, shift, tab, enter, space, and those will work across any given app that have both voice controls and head movement. Typically, though, when things have a lot of custom controls or custom shortcuts, that's where we want to have different profiles set up for things like, hey, I need to go from playing Minecraft to controlling a PowerPoint. You know, when I'm playing Minecraft, I might want to have my head tilting move my character, whereas when I'm in PowerPoint, I want that to actually go to the next slide, and those are two different outputs. We also are working on what we call global controls, which are more of sort of out-of-the-box operating system controls. You saw some of those previewed actually in the video for things like opening apps or files by name, toggling dictation mode, changing your volume settings, like all those sort of operating system things that will actually be able to live alongside the profiles. So you can switch profiles based off the app, and then you'll always have those global set of controls too.
I think it's worth double clicking too on the profiles have the specific voice controls that map to the keyboard shortcuts, but the dictation can be utilized along with any profile anywhere in any app, any program that accepts text. So searching on Wikipedia to the chat in Zoom. So you can always use dictation with any profile.
Yeah,
and Alex, we had, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say we have one more question about compliance before we jump into mission and kind of close out the platform, since we're coming up on our original time, but we're happy to go a couple minutes over to make sure we get all the questions answered.
Yeah, let me go into chat. COPPA and FERPA compliant. So we aren't certified in them, but technically are compliant. We do have an age rating of 3 and up. However, the application is targeted mostly and built mostly along with adults with disabilities. And so we do focus a lot more on that sort of like vocational training, transition training, and that type of access versus focusing on the sort of younger use cases. So we don't have those compliance certifications, but we do have an actual ERPA rating of 3 and up. Cool. A couple other things to note in the platform. I'll skip past all those test devices that I have. And we're going to talk about a little bit later, but also important to know that you can easily get to support, report issues, find our step-by-step guides, go back to explore inputs, which is part of our onboarding and training process, and join our community resources as well at any point from the homepage, or even scrolling to the bottom of the page on any page within the Cephable app. You can always get to the support links, which has more links to other resources and how we work with other community partners and everything else as well. Which is my shameless segue over to you, Julia, about how we like to work with other community partners and organizations too.
Absolutely. So we have just been so excited to see what the platform becomes when we get it into the hands of our users. And a big part of that mission has been successful based on working with community partners. So organizations, as Alex mentioned, who are focused on vocational training, state level assistive technology organizations, community organizations, foundations who are serving individuals with a variety of disabilities. I think Kim had mentioned she has students with muscular dystrophy, and we have, specific, any organization that's serving our individuals who could, get value from Cephable. We love to, we have a no-cost partner agreement that we, offer to folks. And there's just a lot of creativity of how we can work together. Our big goal is trying to get this platform into the hands of individuals that can use it. And the more individuals that use it, the more feedback that we can get so that we can continue to drive this platform to a place where it's the most value for the most people. And so just a couple of highlights of ways that we've had some community partnerships be really successful are through being shared in newsletters and blogs and webinars such as this, getting listed on any online assistive technology resource pages. Even live demo labs have been successful. We, of course, have therapists who are integrating it into therapy sessions and people coming up with research ideas. And just exploring ways, because different organizations have ways that they speak and interact most with their community. So we're definitely open to creativity and partnering with different folks in that way. Which bring me to the next slide, Alex, kind of the heartbeat, the bridge between community, between our revenue customers, between our product team and our engineers who are building this is what we call our consortium. We use that word so much, I always feel like I need to define it. As you'll notice through our app, through our website, we have this love for an octopus because of the intelligence and the adaptability, in which I hope you can see through our platform. We want all of those things to shine. And so a consortium is a group of octopi, octopuses, both are grammatically correct. So our consortium is our group of power users who we bring in to really close user testing with our head of engineering, John Campbell, and myself. We collaborate with individuals, run them through this awesome program where they use our platform, find feature requests and different areas of support. We iterate on that feedback really fast, and they continue to help drive the platform and the features that need the most emphasis for their particular use case so that other folks can utilize it too. So one way that our partners have really supported this is sending us, nominating those power users. And I want to just show you one of our users, Alex. We had like a 20-second video from our first user, Anthony, who joined our program.
Hello there, my name's Anthony. I am a Twitch streamer and musician. If you're looking to make a difference in the disabled community, I recommend checking out the consortium. Not only will you find like-minded people, but also people that genuinely care about you as well. The support and kindness has been overwhelming. I've also helped make an impact and felt valued for doing so. If you end up joining, feel free to say hello in Discord. Click.
We love Anthony. And he's a really active member of our social community also. And I could rattle off so many different ideas that he continues to have for our platform, and has, his stamp on so many of our features, like being able to have the voice control overlay hidden from screen, because that he didn't want that on his particular use case, which a lot of people may want that also for their needs too. So I know that Naomi mentioned that she's going to be sharing this slide deck with you as well. If any of these ideas and partnerships or consortium members or even just downloading the platform for yourself, if any of those things have resonated with you, we've created a kind of one-stop shop so that you can kind of pick and choose which way that you would prefer to, engage with us, whether that's just joining a social channel, whether that's a consortium member, or, using the platform for yourself. We wanted to just give you lots of different avenues to be able to connect with us and find us and utilize the platform so that we can continue to share the mission and vision with like-minded folks.
And I put the link to that, as well as a link to our more details on our consortium and meeting some of our other members and stuff as part of that as well in the chat for folks that are in there. So thank you all so much for the time and taking the time out of your day to learn a little bit more about Cephable. Happy to stick around and answer more questions in chat if anyone has them, or if anyone at this point wants to come off mute and jump in and ask questions. Happy to chat.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. We really appreciate it. Naomi, do you have anything else on your end?
Thank you. This has been wonderful. Really learned a lot. Can't wait to try out more with a few people.
Awesome.
Thank you.
We'll be available in all those places to connect. So let us know how we can continue to support you.
Thank you. Anyone have any last questions before we sign off? Last chance.
It's back.
We're back.
We're back. Okay. Go ahead with your question.
Hi there, good afternoon. This is Noelle Walker from Nutley Family, and I'm just wondering if, well, let me say first that our clientele, or we serve a varying amount of clientele with different disabilities, but specifically for our mental health clinicians, would you be able to give a individual tutorial or a group tutorial at some point?
Yeah, we can certainly talk about opportunities for doing group tutorials, like a deeper dive than what we did here. We do also have a ton of resources and video tutorials and walkthroughs online. Actually, I'll show you even within the app, you can get to them in these step-by-step guides that it's also me and Julia talking in each of these. So you'll see everything from, I'll zoom this in a little bit, how to install, how to do onboarding, trying voice and face controls, different use cases, things like that. So even if we, you know, and happy to talk about ways that we can support with additional training, but also just want to call out that these are forever available and are entirely free. So even if folks just need a little bit of extra support or we're wondering how to try something out specifically, we've got all sorts of different video walkthroughs and stuff. For example, in this one, I'll just jump into as a random one of Julia talking about expression controls. There's a video, there's a tutorial PDF, the control profiles that we even use in the tutorials you can get to, because we're able to share those as well. And then you can see these different step-by-step guides with images, the text on the side as well, that really sort of break down all the different details about how to create different types of controls, how to use them, and actually showing you them in action as well. So those are also always available directly on the website, or you can get to it from the app.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions or ideas or thoughts?
I have a question. I don't know if are you able to hear me or no?
Yep. Yeah, we hear you.
Okay. I would be an individual user. I don't know where to go to get this. I mean, some of the opportunities sound wonderful for me. I just don't know how to go about. I only have use of my right hand, but I think a lot of these things could be helpful to me when I'm working and stuff. I don't know where to go to get the help I need to get this like put into my computer and stuff.
Yeah, so
I just put a direct link.
Oh, even better. You got a way better link than I did.
I did a direct link to the download page so that you don't have to navigate through any of the other pages, so that it's fewer clicks to get to that download into that onboarding process.
And how do I access someone that could help teach me how to use it? Or I'm not very computer savvy. I'm old. Not old, but you know what I mean. I'm past the computer. I'm 60,
Yeah,
so this is not my forte.
So what I would recommend doing is going to the link and downloading the app. And then also we have our 2 different community pages where folks can jump in and help too. We have a Facebook group of users, and then we also have one in an app called Discord that's tends to be more on the sort of gamer side of things, but there's areas there where you can ask questions out in the open, where people from our team can jump in and provide answers in real time, and also just provide you with more resources. But also when you download the app from the link, depending on whether you have a PC or a Mac, there's a helpful step-by-step guide just built right into the app as well that should make it a lot easier to get started than like what I did, where I already had an account and I jumped in and showed you all the details. It's meant to sort of help you learn about the process and try stuff out as you go as well. So it's a little bit more of this sort of fluid of learning it.
Thank you.
But
Yeah,
also-
because
so
it's
in the app, there's also
overwhelming.
links to other support.
No,
Yeah, there's a
thank
lot of
you.
different things, right? Because people use it for a lot of different stuff, but it'll help you learn about the different things to try and sort of take you through that step by step.
All right, thank you.
Is that Diana? Is that right?
Yeah.
I just wanted to add one more thing to you, to your point of there's so many options. Sometimes it's really hard to isolate exactly what you want to try. So I would suggest that you just choose, one application, one thing that you do a lot of times on a computer. If that's, searching for images on Google, or that's playing a certain, New York Times web game, or writing an email. Choose one of those items and work on, just adding one or two ideas, not, trying to use every single input, but just kind of narrow the focus to one particular goal that you would use the most.
Okay. Okay, we'll do it. Thanks.
Awesome.
Excuse me, any other questions? It seems like people are dropping off, so I think this was great. Thank you so much.